Hey, Mike Mikeadelic here. Welcome back to a new episode of Mikeadelic. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for checking out the show. However you came about finding this show, however you discovered this show, thanks for checking us out and giving it a listen. I've been doing this show now officially for 3 years, and man, every episode is different. Every week is different. Every single show is a further step in the evolution of myself and the show as one, coming into being as a newly evolved, ever-expanding and growing fluid life form or entity of its own energetic frequency. So thank you to all the people that have been following along and listening along since day one. You guys are my lovers and friends. You guys are the best. I appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who's new, who's just checking out the show. So thank you. We've got so many awesome episodes with amazing guests. We've got a lot of solo casts that I've done, really just ranging the gamut between kind of, personal stories and, getting kind of vulnerable, sharing some things about the journey of life that we all face. Some episodes getting deep into consciousness and psychedelic spirituality, philosophy, psychology, talking about society, culture, politics, government, these sorts of things. So it's all under the sun, in the Mikeadelic world. And, sometimes I tell people, well, I do this show, Mikeadelic, and, it's like, okay, well, I guess it's about psychedelics. But, I really like Humphrey Osmond's definition of the word psychedelic. He, of course, coined the term psychedelic, but it comes from the Greek Latin words of psycho and delos, which means mind manifesting or manifesting of the mind. And I really like that sort of definition, because it's not all about substances on the show. It's not necessarily all about altered states of consciousness, but this is about thinking for yourself, questioning things, being curious, investigating, topics that maybe we've been told about things for a long time, and maybe it's not the correct things. Maybe we should be asking questions. Maybe we should be thinking a different way. But it's also about sharing your truth, reporting your true story of your life experience to other people out there, because we're not in this alone. We all are in this together, and there's a lot more similarities that we have than differences. So that's it. That's my short little spiel. I apologize for the long intros to the people out there that don't like the long intros. I've included timestamps where you can skip ahead to the interview, to the conversation. I'm really trying to work on finding a balanced approach here of doing an intro and talking. Sometimes I do these longer intros because I just feel really passionate. I feel like I'm in a flow state and I have this lightning in a bottle that I just want to blurt out. And, maybe sometimes I hit it and sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's on, sometimes it's off. But sometimes I just feel like, man, I got something flowing and I got to get it out. So, for example, the last episode with Hamilton Souther, great episode, great conversation. Unfortunately, the internet connection gave us a little bit of static throughout the interview. He was coming in from Iquitos, Peru. It's not so great there. But I felt compelled to kind of share some insights that I had the night before. And it was the relevant place to do that. So anyway, moving forward, I'm really going to try and keep the intros to under 10 minutes long. The last one, I think, was a bit longer, but we had that Psychedelics Today ad that was in there. So, with that being said, thank you to all the people who like the intros, the people who like the solo casts that I do. I appreciate that very much. And so just, message me on Instagram, message me on Facebook, go to my website, mikebrank.com, fill in the contact form. Let me know, what do you like? What don't you like? What would you like to see more of? What kind of guests would you like to see on the show? Do you want to see more solo casts? Do you want to see no intros? How would you, if this was your show, what would you be doing? Let me know. I want to know. This is a collaborative effort, and we're a team here. So thank you very much for your feedback. Always much appreciated. Of course, if you want to support the show, you can go on to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star rating and review. We have 146 ratings, and really what's really cool is that we have like 76 reviews. So a special thanks to all the people that take time out of their lives to write a review, because it really it warms my heart. I'm always just filled with joy when I hear how you guys feel about the show, and that then helps let other people know what we have going on here, and spreading this message of freedom, liberty, expanding consciousness, evolving to a higher state of being, and empowering ourselves to be responsible people, making voluntary decisions to get along and live in a better, healthier, more prosperous society with the freedom to ingest whatever we please and the benefits of psychedelics. So he's spreading that message, putting that signal out there. I'm an independent creator. I do this whole thing on my own, all on myself. Besides from the 25 or so patrons, my Patreon people, my producers of the show, thank you. I love you all. Big shout out to, of course, Hell, Sarah, Gary, Austin, Zach, all you guys. If I'm leaving anyone out, I'm sorry. But they're in the Inner Sanctum Mikeadelic WhatsApp chat group. And I love this group because it just brings people from all around the world together in a community to talk about relevant topics discussed on the show, share trip reports, stories, and all that kind of stuff. So you can go to patreon.com/MikeBrank. You can donate as little as $1 a month. Every little bit helps. It's really, really great. And if you don't want to do a monthly thing, you could go to my website. I have a PayPal one-time donation. You could do that as well. I do have sponsors on the show. They're all affiliate sponsors. So, they're not paying me for sponsorship. They're just companies that I think are doing some cool things, and I'm happy to share what they're doing. I use their products. I use their services. And if you guys use them too, I get like a little, kickback or whatever for promoting them. So Psychedelics Today, go check them out. Their course, Navigating Psychedelics. If you're going through a difficult psychedelic experience, if you just want to be more educated about psychedelics, these guys are on the forefront of providing the best resources to do that. Hemp Bombs, CBD, hemp-derived CBD. Go get that. It's hempbombs.com. Put in the code Mike15. You get 15% off. And Synchro, plant-based and keto nutrition products. Go to synchro.com and put in Mikeadelic. You get 20% off of some awesome stuff over there. So that's about it. Today's show was with an awesome guest, Jennifer Sodini. Me and Jennifer have been like social media buddies, for a long time, and I was so thrilled that I got a chance to talk to her. It's like, I feel like I really know her even more now. Of course, getting to talk to her, but you know what I mean. It's a good conversation. Her website is Evolve and Ascend. Go check it out. Like I said, all the links are in the show notes. All the links for everything is in the show notes, so check that out on the website, in Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. But Evolve and Ascend is an amazing website putting out great content involving consciousness, culture, and theogens, the occult, astrology. They have stuff about magic, spirituality, music, art, just really full, comprehensive, all in one place. Very beautifully designed website, easy to navigate, talking about the things that we love and care about on this show. She's also a partner for Whitma Live. Whitma Live is a conscious event series that is bringing live events together with curated panels to talk about experiences centered on empowering and activating the imagination, alternative viewpoints, gathering together like-minded individuals, and really exploring what well-being truly means in this modern time that we live in. So check out Whitma Live as well. Jennifer's also an author of an amazing children's book that's promoting inclusivity and connectedness, just an uplifting, great book that she published in 2014 called The Unity Tree, and the links for that are in the show notes as well. Jennifer also has her own website, jennifersodini.com. Follow Evolve and Ascend on Instagram, Jennifer Sodini on Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. And she also has a deck of oracle cards, the Amenti Oracle Feather Heart Deck and Guidebook, Ancient Wisdom for the Modern World by Jennifer Sodini, illustrated by Natalie Miller. And so it's really cool. Some of this stuff is outside of my purview. I'm not so knowledgeable about oracle cards and astrology and occult type stuff and magic and ancient esoteric wisdom and these sorts of things. So it's really great to talk to somebody who has been doing this her whole life, as you'll see in the show, hear her story, and really that's about it. So thank you, everybody. Follow Mikeadelic _podcast on Instagram. Putting out daily content there. And without further ado, the wonderful, the amazing, the courageous, the brave, the talented Jennifer Sodini, everybody. Enjoy.
Psychedelics are illegal not because a loving government is concerned that you may jump out of a third-story window. Psychedelics are illegal because they dissolve opinion structures and culturally laid down models of behavior and information processing. They open you up to the possibility that everything you know is wrong.
We don't need new laws that control our consciousness and rigidly place it in a prison.
Cognitive liberty. The fact that as adults, if we're not hurting anybody else, we should have the right to explore the contours of our own consciousness without any mediation or legislation on the part of somebody else.
Reject authority. Authority is a lie.
Or is it perception?
Information is power, but we have to seize the opportunity. The opportunity.
First question, why are you here? And follow up, what is this all about?
The great questions.
Yeah. So Jennifer Sodini, thank you for joining the Mikeadelic podcast. So please, share your story with people. I've been following your stuff for a little while. Evolve and Ascend is the website. You have another project going on called Whitma, which is well-being in the modern age. So yeah, maybe you could just tell me, like, how did you evolve and ascend? How did this all happen?
Oh, wow. Well, it's a combination of psychedelic, synchronicity, and a bunch of things in between. So let's see. I started Evolve and Ascend in the summer of 2013 after a series of really interesting events. In 2012, I was working in pop culture, and around that time, I discovered the Mayan calendar, and I was convinced that December 21st, 2012 was going to be the end of the world.
Oh yeah. I was there too. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the time, man.
Mm-hmm.
So around that time, I really went deep down the rabbit hole. I started researching, what the apocalypse meant, the Mayan calendar, all of these things. And then a lot of different kind of, psychedelic pioneers came to the forefront. So that's when I discovered the work of Terence McKenna and Alan Watts. So on December 21st, 2012, I took a hero's journey of psilocybin, and it basically broke open my head and revealed to me my life path. At the time too, I was in a relationship. I thought I was going to get married. I thought that, this was just what my life was supposed to be. And one of my favorite expressions is man plans and God laughs. So
yeah.
when I had that experience, I was like, wow, okay. So complete redirect. Pretty much everything started to shift from there. I ended that relationship. Around that time, I also discovered the work of Daniel Pinchbeck. And that summer of 2013, he was hosting a retreat down in Costa Rica to try plant medicine, ayahuasca. So it's like, this I need to try, I need to experience, because it felt really part of the journey. And, I went down to Costa Rica with a hot pink suitcase, not knowing what I was getting into.
Fish out of water.
Completely.
Yeah.
But it was one of the most profound moments in my life, and it really just set me on the path. So because I had this experience working in pop culture as a blogger, I I kind of had that under my belt. And when I came back from Costa Rica, I was like, I really want to create a website that explores the content that I really care about, but there's nothing that really, excuse me, that exists at the moment that really speaks to me aesthetically, but then speaks to me in like what I'm looking to find in the world, right? So I, not really knowing what I was doing, I was just like, I'm going to start this on Squarespace and see how it all manifests. And pretty much from that moment to, flash forward now, it's been this like wild ride ever since.
Yeah. Well, it's so crazy because I feel like you're describing like my story as well. And I feel like other people who I've heard their stories of how they kind of started their thing or how they started to change their life or something like that. I remember 2012, getting involved in that stuff. I don't know if I thought it was going to be the end of the world, but I kind of was like, something's going to happen. And I feel like something did happen because everything for me started to change in 2012 too. And that's, same kind of guys, McKenna, Pinchbeck, Watts, I started getting into this stuff and yeah, you don't see what you're looking for out there, then create it, right? Like that's a good message.
Exactly. Yeah, it seems like that time really was this like portal of initiation, right? There's this whole phenomenon
Totally.
of so many people in our space that, whether it was just because of that content coming to the forefront, it opened up this kind of level of consciousness to look beyond the veil. But it really felt like there was this shift in energy that it's just from what's happened from then to now, even it's wild. It's really been this crazy lifting of the veil, and you can't help but look back and say, okay, I think there might have been something to this.
Yeah, I kind of think like that too because I don't think I really fully will have the capacity to understand, nor does maybe anybody, but I kind of get like this sense of, all right, like this was a kind of a turning point here where like all of a sudden certain kinds of nodes of consciousness are just going to like light up and you have a choice. Like you either want to kind of partake in the evolution, or just ignore it or whatever, that's the way that I kind of saw it happening. Maybe.
Completely.
I don't know.
And we can't discount too, around that time, just a lot of really strange things started happening. So I remember before, I had kind of went down the 2012 rabbit hole around like August of 2011 or no, 2012. Yeah, it was August 2012.
Yeah, wait, before you continue, I want to know what got you into that? Like what sparked your interest? Because I always find this to be really interesting. Like what is it that brings certain things into certain people's lives that at a certain time, It's like why were you ready to like receive this information at that time, and what like led to that curiosity? Because some people, a lot of people just don't have that curiosity. They're like 2012, what are you talking about? Mayans? Like what sparked that interest for you?
Well, at the time I was still kind of a closeted occultist. I grew up with my grandmother. She was really into the occult, and she
closeted
was
occultist. Stay in there, you occultist witch. Don't come out.
Well, see, I don't really identify as a witch, but I've always been into the esoteric philosophies, secret teaching of all ages. And it stems from my grandma because she was really into Aleister Crowley and witchcraft and demonology. And she was kind of this anarchist free thinker that hated the Catholic Church. And she literally it was way too young for her to be saying this kind of stuff to me. But I'm like 10 years old. And she's like, everybody a pedophile, they're molesters, they're stealing money. Like, whoa, grandma.
Yeah,
but
sounds like me a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's crazy thinking back then, because this is like 1995, 96, so there's no internet. So she was just like coming to that conclusion from her own reading and research.
Wow. So she was she kind of like teaching this to you, sort of different kinds of practices, or was she encouraging you to like read certain things or just talk to you about certain stuff?
It was a combination of everything. So when I was really young, she taught me how to read oracle cards. So we would sit at her kitchen table, and I have this oracle card deck that I don't know where it came from. Sadly, my grandmother passed when I was 13, so I never got to find the origins of it. We haven't been able to find out, through all of my internet research, where it came from, but it's what I learned from. So we'd sit at her kitchen table, and she'd put all the cards face down. and have me flip them up one at a time and connect to how my intuition was with the card and ask me how it made me feel and what I'd see and what it felt like to me. So she was like really exposing me to like opening up my intuition at such a young age. But then we'd sit and, have her copy of Crowley's Magick with all of her highlighted notes, and she'd sit and talk to me about it. Art to her was really important.
Mm.
She was really, really into kind of finding the like symbolism and artwork. So we also had Hieronymus Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights in their living room.
Wow.
So we'd sit and talk about it, and it was a lot of discussion. And when I was younger, my grandmother we used to travel a lot together, and it was really important for her to have me write down everything. And when I was really young, I didn't really want to do it. So I actually have this like journal from when I was like in second grade going to Alaska and not really loving having to write it all down. But she just really impressed upon me the importance of writing and following your journey through life.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. So she was really like your first kind of teacher.
Completely.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, you just said something though that sparked my interest a little bit about the oracle cards. First of all, that's really cool. They're just like these mysterious oracle cards that you got from your grandmother and of unknown origin. So that's a really cool story. But what about like looking at the cards? Because I'm not so familiar with this space. My girlfriend kind of dabbles in some stuff, and I kind of pay attention on the periphery. But what I think you just explained it kind of well, like laying the cards out and then kind of seeing how that reacts or responds, or how you respond to that. Is that right? Like, can you explain that card reading process a little bit more?
Completely. So I think it's important to preface by saying there's a big difference between oracle cards and tarot cards.
Oh, okay.
The tarot cards explore the major and minor arcana, which are just archetypes and elements of the soul's journey into coming to understand the way of the world. So it basically has this system of 78 cards that show you all of the different elements and people you'll meet along your path. It's a very, very intense system. But every card within the tarot deck is usually within the same major and minor arcana. Oracle cards, they're kind of like the Rorschach test of the subconscious mind, and there can be an oracle card deck on anything. I collect them, so I have decks on connecting to your totem spirit, or angels and ascended masters. It's basically like taking cards, and it's like your study cards for the subconscious mind. But it's like a choose your own adventure game, really.
Right. Yeah. It's all about how it resonates with you and what you're feeling in the moment of that card. Because I used to think of it in this kind of, this is how my brain works. I get exposed to something new. I go, that's bullshit. And then I make fun of it. And then something happens in my life. And then I go, oh wait, maybe there's something to this. And then I give it a second look. So my first reaction was when encountering my friend's mom. He was this kind of guy that, like, when we were in high school and stuff, we'd go over his house and we could smoke weed there and do whatever. His parents didn't care. And his mom was a clown. She worked as a clown.
Oh, wow.
It was great. It was like she'd go to McDonald's and like do clown parties and stuff, and we'd be like dropping acid in his room, and she'd come home, be like, "Hey guys," and we're all like, "Jesus Christ!" Like I'm terrified. I was terrified of clowns. Mainly from the movie It, but then she was like, she had tarot cards and stuff, and she did like a reading, and I don't know, we always just kind of thought she was weird and like whatever. So yeah, but it is very interesting, because then when you start to actually look at it without having any judgment and just being open to it, it's pretty amazing the kind of things that can happen. I just started to see some stuff going on in my life. And, most recently actually with me was a numerology type of thing. Like I started seeing 1111 everywhere and 444. And I was like, okay, this is weird, because I'm not the kind of person that's just going to like jump on and attach to this right away, but this is weird. This is happening. So it's just interesting how this develops, because there's so many things, with Evolve and Ascend and all the stuff that you do. It's like there's so much to learn about all this stuff there, and it's amazing too for someone like me who's like coming from the outside, like learning more. Oh, interesting, cool, new oracle cards. Didn't know that they were different than tarot cards. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. How can like, I guess, like, do you do readings for people, or did you start to do readings for people? Did you do readings for yourself? Like, how did you start to kind of work your way into this? I know your grandmother was showing you, but did you go out on your own and start doing stuff?
Yeah, so after she passed, the oracle cards are kind of like my forever companion. So in elementary school, I went to elementary school in a very waspy area. So being an unbaptized free thinker was not really didn't make me the most popular person in school.
Yeah.
But
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Brielle. It's a little shore town in Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Very much like boat shoes and golfers.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But the fact that I was able to read oracle cards was always a novelty to people. So then in high school, at parties, people would always be like, "Jen, read oracle cards," and it was always so funny because at these parties, people would line up and I'd be doing readings, and everybody would like be having their mind blown. But it was always just a part of me. And then flash forward after starting Evolve and Ascend, and this is even like summer of 2014, I actually did readings publicly. I worked in a bookshop and I offered readings online, but I had this kind of epiphany um, after that experience, that it didn't never felt right for me to charge people to do readings. I never did it when I was younger. I never did it in high school. And ultimately, I'm not telling anybody things that they don't already know. It's just giving them confirmation. So for me, it feels better to empower people to learn how to do it themselves, because it's like the Wizard of Oz thing where it's like the power's within you. You don't want to give it away to the man behind the curtain.
Right.
So, yeah, I made a point that I would never charge anybody for a reading ever again after that summer.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of go over this stuff because there's so many common misconceptions or, just judgments coming from the outside looking in, just like, oh, this is just a bunch of nonsense or witchcraft or whatever it is, or take a Ouija board and talk to ghosts or something impress your friends at a party. I don't know, just people, the average person kind of coming in with that viewpoint. But then again, when you go into it, you realize there's something there. I remember living in New York. I lived in New York City for like 8 years before I moved out, and I remember just seeing like all these psychic shops. Like I lived down in the Village, so many psychic reading shops, and it's like, all right, yeah, give me $20 and I'll tell you about your future. And it kind of like maybe when people are, I guess the point that I'm trying to get at here is that when there's people out there that are involved in this stuff, there's always kind of like the charlatans or the fakes or the scammers, but then there's the real aspect of it, which is what you're talking about, like the kind of coming from like a genuine, authentic place. And I think that's great, not charging people for it. I mean, that's amazing because things can get kind of tricky when you're like, entering the world of commerce and spirituality or, whatever we want to call it. It's like, all right, I'll be your guru for, $6,000 a month and I'll tell you what to eat and, look to the West and stand on your tippy toes and say Sanskrit mantras or whatever it is. It's just people have their ways of doing things. So how do you see, because I see this from looking out from the outside, I see Evolve and Ascend and what you're doing kind of cutting through that and offering something unique and different that speaks above the noise that's out there. How do you see that like whole landscape?
Well, thank you for saying that.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean that's a big intention that I have. It's like I always feel like I'm kind of like the punk kid within the space because I'm not a life coach. I don't identify as a witch. I'm not charging for my services. I really want to have this space that offers breadcrumbs and empowers people to find the tools and wisdom they need to self-actualize without having to pay for a click funnel or a $6,000 program.
Yeah.
So I just, to me, it's so important to offer that and to make it digestible. A lot of esoteric philosophy is kind of hard to process, but
Right.
what I've learned along the path is if you actually understand it, you can articulate it in a way that anybody can relate to, whether you're somebody new on the path or you're a 50-year-old Republican. So everything that I do, I want to make it relatable and kind of allow people to have those aha moments and move forward from there.
Yeah. What do you think is the most like core fundamental message of your work and what you do with Evolve and Ascend? I mean, I think you kind of just said it right there, but in terms of, you know, what you're, the kinds of things that you're talking about, sharing the stories, like I was just reading one about death, life and death, on the website, which was really interesting and really powerful. And yeah, so, you know, because you have consciousness, culture, entheogens, the occult. What thing, I guess, speaks to you the most? I mean, you could say all of them, I guess, and then kind of give a little take on why, or, you know, also just like what's like the sort of, yeah, I guess let's just start there. Like what speaks to you the most, and what kind of like drives you with this project?
I love the idea of the notion of cosmic consciousness, right? Where it's like there's one truth, many songs. Every culture, philosophy, great wisdom tradition has been scratching the surface of this truth, and they just articulate in a way that's and aligned with their culture and time. So, I really like the idea of being able to present a holistic worldview where no matter which avenue you take to understand reality, it's like the ladder, the stairs, the elevator, the escalator doesn't really matter. You're going up. And to me, what up looks like is to be able to view the world with love and dissolving the illusion of separateness and, putting yourself above somebody else or putting somebody else down, or we're in this space now, which is really interesting, where it's like identity politics reigns supreme. And it's like, I am this and I am that. And it's this divide and conquer mentality. And
Mm.
even within the conscious media space, it's very weird and it doesn't really jive with me very well. But it's like, ultimately, you are not these labels and these things that you subscribe to. You're just a point of light within a greater light. And all of these tools that are available can show you that. It's just whatever path gets you there fastest or resonates most with you.
Yeah, whatever speaks to you. I mean, it's so important too, because like the stuff that you're creating, it's, people can create stuff and they can put it out there. You could have like the most profound article that you could find somewhere hidden on some website that looks like it was built in 1992, and it's like, whoa, like this is amazing, but it's super dense. Maybe it's not accessible. But then you have something that's really aesthetically pleasing, communicates in ancient symbology, and it kind of resonates on a different level. I know you're big into design, right? Like I think that's pretty important too, like curating or cultivating this kind of whole look of something, the whole look and feel of something. And I'm curious to know what I'd like for you to comment on that, but also just the Evolve and Ascend logo. I love it. Like I remember when I first saw it, and I was just like, oh, that's what I should have done, because I like really, for me, and I think for you too, like we could talk more about this, but like Egypt and like pyramids, and just I have this connection there, and it's been there. So this kind of notion, and also it had to do with Robert Anton Wilson and this sort of like Illuminati or all-seeing eye type thing. And so I was like, cool, I'm going to make this triangle and I'm going to put it in there, and it's going to take the place of the A. And it's like, I feel like that'll be nice. And then I saw yours and I'm like, oh, that's better.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the symbol and then just kind of like the whole like vibe and aesthetics of what you're doing? Cause I think that's a very important part of communicating a message.
Yeah. So it's funny enough. So when I decided to start Evolve and Ascend, I really wasn't sure how to create a logo. And then by random chance, I wound up meeting this designer at a party in Brooklyn through one of my best friends. And I hired him for the design. And I was like, listen, I wanted to have this feel. At that time, I was really into Shepard Fairey and the Obey stuff. I was like, oh my God, it's like they live. And this is like,
oh my God, I'm wearing that shirt right now.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm wearing the Obey shirt. Yeah.
That's amazing. But I explained to him what I wanted, and to me, I wanted to transmute that symbol that's so triggering. The all-seeing eye on the back of the dollar
Right.
bill, which is like this nefarious thing to so many
Yeah.
people. But for me, I wanted it to feel like, no, 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 no. When you get to the top, you can see everything, and that's why I have the infinity symbol in the middle. It's like you can see how everything connects, and that light and dark are one and the same. And then the Om and like sacred sound. So it's just I wanted the symbol to represent cosmic consciousness and coming to see and connect every angle of reality. So my designer was able to execute it really well, and I'm very, very grateful for him for seeing that vision to fruition.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it definitely does that. I think, with good design, with good symbols, like it just evokes a feeling or it resonates with you maybe at a deeper level that you're not aware of.
Totally. And it's funny because I get so many messages on Facebook and Instagram saying like, "You're Illuminati, this is satanic." And I'm like, do you remember the movie The Princess Bride where
Yeah.
there's like he's like, "You keep using that word, but I don't think you know what that means." It's kind of like, okay, yeah, I'm in the Illuminati, sure. Um,
Right.
but no, it's kind of funny because when I break it down, it's always nice to kind of transform that conversation and have the person leave being like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, I like that, like turning it on its head thing too. I think, that's why I did the triangle with the eye in it as well, was like kind of taking that symbol and just making it something, like, I mean, a very famous example of this is like Hitler taking the Nazi symbol from, actually I don't even know, but it's like an ancient Indian symbol for peace and love, right? Do you know about this?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
funny enough, because I spent the summer in Nepal, Tibet, and Bhutan, and the swastika is sacred to them. So when I was in Tibet, actually, I circled this mountain called Mount Kailash, which is this very holy pilgrimage for Buddhists and Hindu and members of the Bone faith. And one of the first like checkpoints I had was this tent, and I'm sitting drinking butter tea with these Tibetans, and I look up and there's a gigantic swastika, and to them, there's no evilness to it. It's supposed to be this auspicious, like the connection of all the elements. It's like the most sacred symbol possible. But some theorize that Hitler actually read this book called The Secret Doctrine, which was written by H.P. Blavatsky, who's basically the matriarch of the New
Right.
Age movement. And that was basically, it was very controversial because she talked about like root races and the Aryan races. And I think he took that a little too extreme. Some say that maybe that's just a rumor, but if you actually read The Secret Doctrine, it's kind of like you put two and two together and like, oh, maybe he was loosely influenced by it, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that like, this is really interesting to me. I read this cool graphic novel by Douglas Rushkoff and someone else it was called Alistair and Adolf. And it talks about how it was basically like a graphic novel about this guy who works at I think advertising agency or something, coming up with like slogans and logos. And then he's talking to his boss, I think, who's dying, and he tells him this story about being involved in like World War II and how they were trying to come up with like a symbol or a sigil to like win the war with, like, to like create something, and they came up with the V for victory for the British to combat Hitler's thing. And then it takes you back to the, spoiler alert, takes you to the modern day, and it shows like all of the symbols that we have by our corporations, and the logos, and how they're like imbued with this power and stuff. I mean, just like your knowledge of the occult and these sorts of things, like the power of symbols and language and design and all that stuff could be used for like really nefarious and dark purposes, but they could also be used for like really rejuvenative, healing, inspiring, light shining practices too. Am I right about that?
Oh, completely. It's that Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility.
Mm.
And symbols I mean, the subconscious mind relates to symbols. It's the language of dreams. It's what imprints consciousness with ideas. And sigil magic, referencing comic books, do you know Grant Morrison?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he speaks of it often. And I actually practice sigil magic in my own kind of monthly routine, and it's very potent because that's how the mind responds. You're basically like programming yourself with an idea, and then if you think about that on a larger scale, or even just like the subliminal messages in advertising, there's something really powerful there. But if
Mhm.
you know it and can identify it, and then you can use it for good, I mean, that's the thing. It's being able to see and then go forward from there.
Yeah, totally. Like you mentioned you were writing for a pop culture blog. I think you said blog. And I was working in social media marketing, and like I had a similar kind of feeling. I was like, Jesus Christ, like I'm copywriting and I'm doing stuff and I'm just kind of like tapping into this like power to persuade and manipulate people to buy things that they probably don't even really need and that I don't even really believe in. It's like, what am I doing? And I don't know. I see that kind of on autopilot, in our society. Just basically, I guess the way that everything is set up, it kind of makes it easy for people to just jump on that path. But then to kind of turn it in a different direction, that could be very powerful too. And then you start creating, the kinds of content that is fulfilling for your soul and for other people's, and that has a lot of power too. What's been sort of like a few of the most powerful, I guess, experiences or moments that you've had since creating Evolve and Ascend for you?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's been a real trip. So some of the stuff is just stranger than fiction, but I guess I'll go in a linear fashion for it. There was a profound moment. It was this summer of 2014, which is like just a really weird time because that's when I was reading oracle cards, and then my ex at the time was on tour with the Budos band, and just a lot of like really weird things started to happen. And I remember having my first ever talk at well, it was actually my second talk. Never mind. My second talk was at this festival in Brooklyn called Gratitude, and it was very surreal because Daniel Pinchbeck was somebody that kind of like opened up this path to me, and I got booked to speak at this thing, and I actually wound up speaking after Daniel and this man named Jim Clark, who was the chairman of the World Technology Network. After Jim spoke, he came up to me. He's like, "I just have to. I need to speak to you, and I need to invite you to this, and it's very important that you come." So right after that, he invited me to this thing called the World Technology Network, which was like so strange because I got this invite to this thing, and I'm the only person that's like me there.
Mm.
Everybody else is in tech and finance, and I remember sitting and John Perry Barlow. He's
Mhm.
unfortunately he's passed, but I got to see him speak during a live telecast with Edward Snowden,
Oh, wow.
and that moment to me was so profound because just the things that Edward Snowden was saying then, and just kind of where we're at now, to be able to sit and witness it, and it really kind of did something to me on a deep level.
Mm.
John Perry Barlow was saying how, to make a goal in life to be a great ancestor. And that really stuck with me. And one of Edward Snowden's key points was saying that the greatest tragedy is revelation met with apathy.
Mm. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ain't that the
Um,
truth?
yeah. And I mean, it's like where we're at now, it seems like a lot of people kind of have this like apocalypse fatigue. So a lot of people are very angry. A lot of people are kind of over it. But from 2014 to now, that was a big thing.
Wow.
Um, and then I'd say the second to that was receiving the Tao. So it was funny. So my ex one morning says to me, he's like, "Did you want to go to a Tao ceremony?" And I misheard him, and I thought he said dowsing. So I thought that we were gonna go look look for water with rods. So I'm like, yeah, fuck it. This sounds great. Why not? So we actually wound up going to a temple in Queens, and it was this 10-hour ceremony that was only in Chinese, and I had to wear headphones, the English interpretation. And I never really knew anything about the Tao. I wasn't that aware of it. That was not a philosophy that I ever explored that much.
Yeah,
But
I'm
listening
kind
to
of
it,
like sort of aware. I mean, like, can you explain it a little bit more? The Tao. That's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of this like it kind of relates to the notion of cosmic consciousness, but it's like everything is and isn't all at once. It's the cosmic balance of life and death. Everything is kind of like posited in this riddle, right? So like Lao Tzu, his koans and things that he'd speak of were very much like these puzzles for you to figure out. So actually, a friend of mine, he was a 33rd degree Freemason, and he told me one of the best pieces of advice he was given was very like Tao Zen, to teach, not talking.
Mm.
So there's a lot of that where you're supposed meant to figure it out. Um, but it was wild because at the end of the ceremony, your name is burned in the book of life. And then you're given the three treasures, which are these secrets that you're not allowed to tell anybody, and the secret magic word and mudra. But then they also reveal something that kind of blew my mind and stuck with me to this day because it was this feeling I had always had. So they talk about Christ being crucified on Skull Mountain between two thieves. And he says, when you think, the person had said to me, it's like when you look beyond the words at the higher meaning, is that don't let your eyes deceive you of the truth. So when you think of the symbolism of that, Christ being crucified on a mountain in between two thieves, it's like the third eye and the things that we, deceive ourselves with our vision when our true vision is within the unity in between it all.
Whoa.
Yeah. The mind blower right there.
Yeah.
God, and then I mean so um almost 2 years ago now too, which is so wild. Right around the time I started the Oracle card deck that I have coming out in May, through random synchronicity, I was actually gifted a trip to Egypt by Nassim Harriman.
Mm.
And one of the nights that we were there, I got to spend the night in the Great Pyramid. So we had about an hour in each of them. And that was one of the most profound moments in my life. It happened under the night of the full moon in Libra. And I got to lay in the king's chamber. And anybody that thinks the pyramids were like tombs is like out of their fucking mind. Talk about a portal of initiation, man. I
Wow.
mean, just comparable to a psychedelic trip being in that space.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, so I've watched. So I was gonna say I've read, but I haven't read a lot of. I've watched a lot of like Graham Hancock and John Anthony West, and a couple of these other guys like Robert Schoch talk about the pyramids and what they think was going on there. So from my understanding, it was like I think they think that it was really kind of like this conduit for energy. What do you know anything about that or?
Oh yeah, I absolutely, especially walking into it. So, having the pop culture background and being a cinephile and loving movies and trying to find references that make things relatable.
Like Stargate.
Yeah, like Stargate meets. Have you seen Arrival?
Yes.
Okay, so the scene in Arrival where they go into the spaceship and gravity shifts.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like that walking into the King's Chamber.
Wow.
And then as you're walking up and in, the way that the geometry is inside of the pyramid and the way that sound travels through there, you cannot help but have this like realization that the Egyptians knew of the technology within sound, because as you chant, the way that sound carries through the room, it reverberates through every single one of your cells to the point that you just feel like you're having an out of body experience.
Wow. Yeah, I saw that they were talking about how it's really about the design, and a lot of people think like, oh, well, they were just primitive and they just put these rocks together or something, and if they were really advanced, they would have used steel and glass or something like that. Or I mean, that probably wouldn't have lasted throughout the ages. So, but there's also something about like rock being alive and having this life to it and this resonance to it and this energy to it, and how they constructed everything and the importance of sound and light and all that stuff. So wow, you got to experience that, huh? I'm a little I'm a little terrified to go to Egypt, to be honest, because I've had way too many. Well, I had this very profound ayahuasca ceremony where I was basically like ripped back into ancient Egypt, and it like shook me to my core. And so many like synchronicities and weird things happened around this thing. So, I mean, I guess, do you want to hear about it?
Yeah, please.
All right, cool. So I was working at this ayahuasca center called the Temple of the Way of Light in Peru, and last year spent about 4 months there. And I mean, just I've had so many ayahuasca ceremonies, and they're all amazing. And sometimes you're just shitting and puking, but but even still, there's great things that come out of that too. But this one particular ceremony was very different than a lot of the other ones that I've had. And I've had some really profound, very peak experience type ceremonies. But this one, I felt like I was really kind of like ripped back through time. Like I had felt this kind of like weird holographic reverberation of like my body, and kind of saw myself like leave my body and like get like dragged through the floor back to this time period in Egypt. And I, it was kind of almost dreamlike but lucid. But it was one of those things where, when you have like a dream or you maybe encounter something in life, and you get this kind of communication or this sense of knowing or this information download. It's not necessarily playing out in like linear time fashion. You know what I mean?
Oh, completely.
So it was like I was back in Egypt, and I got the sense that like I was some kind of slave that had like risen to the ranks of the elites, and I was working with them, and they were like these wizards that were doing dark magic on people. And I was like, I had a wife and like kids, and I was working with them. And I think like my mom was there or something like that. But I was working with these kind of like elite wizards of ancient Egypt, and they had this, like, I was like, oh, I got to like tell the people like what's going on. And they, like, I discovered this like weird black, like floating goo that was like in this chamber, and they were like it came to me that this was like some kind of reality creation goo. It was like this floating metallic black orb, and that was like the source of their power and what they were doing, or it was an integral part of it. And so I was trying to like tell the people, but then they turned it on me like I was the bad one. And then so basically what happened was I was like marched out into the public square and executed in front of like all the people of Egypt. They were like, they turned on me. They were throwing tomatoes at me. They were like booing me, like people that I knew and loved. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like this was them. This wasn't me. And then I was like, there was like advanced technology. I was like hooked up to some kind of machine that was like ripping my guts out for hours, and while keeping me alive at the same time. And then they kind of like at the final end of it, they like cast some kind of spell upon me, like to never return again or something like that. And it was, they were like these very tall, skinny beings that were like shooting energy out of their hands while I was being executed in the public square. Or maybe they were doing that in private after the public execution. But anyway, so I have this experience. It's super real. I come out of it, and the next day, like I'm telling people about it. Someone gives me this book, The Flower of Life. I'm looking at it. All of a sudden, I see these words like ka, sha, ha, ra. Turns out to be Sanskrit. Well, there was another ceremony that I had just spontaneously started speaking Sanskrit. Then I remember my parents, they came to visit me in New York. We went to the Met, and we were standing next to one of the pyramids, one of the artifacts they have there. And my mom's maiden name is written in the pyramid wall, like in the brick, in the stone. Then after the ceremony happened, I go back to Iquitos, to the town. I call my parents, talking to them. Hey, how's it going? What's up? What's going on? Oh, we did one of those DNA tests, by the way, and we found out like our lineage, like ancestry or whatever, part Egyptian, like Northern African, Mediterranean Egyptian. Like that was what they had revealed to me, and Jewish. They said partially Jewish too. And I remember like something about being like a Jewish slave or something like that in that ayahuasca experience. Then I remember like a couple years ago, I just drew, like I just drew this painting. I had no idea. I just drew it. And it was like a pyramid with an eye and like this kind of like weird dog-headed figure, like an Anubis kind of thing. I'm like, oh, that was weird. Why did I draw that? And all this like secret language stuff. So I think there may be some more things. But anyway, it's a long story, but it's basically just, it really like hit me profoundly. And I don't know what the hell to make of it still, but it has definitely made me think a lot about some kind of something happening.
Oh my God. So can I kind of blow your mind for a minute?
Sure, please.
So there is a conspiracy that the black stone in Mecca, the Kaaba stone, is actually from this substance. It's like there's this whole black goo conspiracy.
Really?
To be like, yes.
Whoa.
I've spent hours going down this rabbit hole. And there's this idea that there is this black goo that's a programmable substance. That is why, we were in Iran and Iraq, and it's basically this like kind of malevolent thing that can control people and
Holy
can be
shit.
used for black magic.
No
Yes.
way.
Yes way.
Oh my God. What?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do, Jennifer? Like, what am I supposed to do now? How am I supposed to live with this information?
Awareness, not be-awareness,
Yeah.
But it's funny because like you're telling me this, and I kind of just had like I could see where you were. And, do you remember the story of like Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, basically? Do you remember
Vaguely,
this?
yeah, vaguely.
Vaguely. So basically, Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers, and he rose up from slavery to become the chief vizier for the Egyptians because of his ability to interpret dreams.
Wow.
And there's like this whole esoteric thing behind it. So I'm wondering if you're like dialed into that life somehow, or like got to take a peek into that timeline, because there's a lot of really interesting synchronicity and conspiracy behind some of that vision that you had.
Yeah. I mean, it really blew my mind you just blew my mind just now, because it's like, because I guess I have this skeptical part of me too. It's always just kind of like, well, maybe it was just a way of putting things into pictures so I can understand them about what's going on in my life now. Or what does this mean? How do I apply this? How do I fucking integrate this? Like, what is it? What is this? And then there's this other part of me that's like, oh, okay, cool. I'm like some kind of reincarnation of some like thing, and I have like another mission that I need to like play out in this life. Like there's so many different ways that I think that one could interpret it. I don't know. What I mean, like, what do you think? You think I'm Joseph? Like,
well, I think that whatever it may be, try and extract the most useful thing of it. And what's the overarching message? It's like coming into your power and being able to use it without falling to the hands of the elite that want to destroy you, right?
Oh my God, yeah. That's kind of what I did extract out of it, yeah.
Yeah. So, whether that was a timeline of yours or just a timeline that you sliced into, whatever it is, I think that there's some usefulness to kind of look at that, what that represents, and see how you can kind of ground it into this life. Because, we're in this space now where the world needs more storytellers and people that can speak a certain language where it makes things relatable. And using your voice and the sacredness of sound to transmit ideas is a pretty profound path to take.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I mean, like you said, rip through a timeline or something. What are your thoughts on that? Like, tell me about time.
Yeah, God.
How do you like these questions, by the way? Yeah. So what do you think about time? What do you think about reality? What's your answer to consciousness? Go.
I live for these conversations.
Awesome. Me too.
So around, again, like 2014 was just like very weird time. So I had this moment when I was working in that bookshop where, every time that we had lunch on this Ouija board that the woman that owned the shop. She was a collector of paranormal memorabilia. And like our lunch table was basically this big Ouija board, right? So one day in between readings, I was like, you know what? I know my energy and I know myself. I'm going to give this thing a whirl and see. And I don't know what portal I opened or what, but my colleague and I started using it and all this stuff started coming through that like blew my fucking mind. And I was like, oh my God, I need to go home and settle with this. And basically it opened up this whole thing where I had a good solid 6 months of my life where I was channeling after that Ouija board situation happened.
Whoa.
So when it happened, I started getting it just blows my mind thinking about it now too, because I eventually wound up closing the door on it because it just felt like it was too much time in the astral realm. But Mike, I was getting stuff in Aramaic and I was getting things in Turkish. I was getting words that I had never heard before in my entire life. And my ex had acted as my scribe. So I would get all these words, we'd write them down and look it up and be like, what the fuck?
Wow.
What does this mean?
Like, what were some of them, if you can remember? Do you
Yeah.
want to
So
share? Yeah.
basically, we got this word. I got this word that came through over and over and again. It was Teete, Teete. And I was like, what is this? T. And I looked it up, and what it meant was the Our Lord's Prayer in Aramaic. And I was told, I got this whole download about how that it's a prayer that's been subverted and used as a method of control, and people are confused with what it really means, but really it's an invocation of protection and like a prayer of the cosmos. And it's this very sacred esoteric thing that it's like a way to protect yourself. And I had never heard of that before. Like, growing up with a grandmother that was like, fuck the Catholic Church. I never even had any like connection to Jesus at all or any of these things. But it opened this whole portal to like esoteric Christianity and Gnosticism and whatever else. And I keep getting these breadcrumbs from what I channel. And I got this whole download about Jesus having a daughter. And I mean, not to get like super trippy, but like there's this whole thing that there's actually, I came to find after, this whole weird experience that some believe that Jesus actually had a daughter named Sarah. And there's this whole idea that Sarah like was like this other patron saint, whatever. Long, crazy, trippy story.
Yeah.
But basically, having been in it, I started getting so confused. I'm like, what does all this mean? Why am I getting this? Like, did I have some past life connected to this? What is going on? Am I like slicing into time? What is going on? So for me, ultimately, after, I eventually, like I said, I closed the door on it because, I literally have like notebooks of the channelings that I'm not ready to go back to.
Mm-hmm.
But I've come to kind of believe that we're living in this space where it's like everything is like a Russian nesting doll, where these time is layered in ways like where it's like, the Matryoshka dolls where like you open one up and then you open up another and you open up another. And it's confusing because we're only aware of what we're in and what our consciousness is in at the current moment, but everything is happening all at once. And time is this illusion that is so hard for the brain to kind of like compute infinity. But I think that, there are all of these layers simultaneously happening on top of one another. And whether we're using a system of divination like a Ouija board, or even like playing with oracle and tarot cards, or having a psychedelic experience, we're ripping into different potential timelines or seeing potential timelines and like just being able to have a kind of greater view of the layers of reality. I mean, I know this probably sounds nuts to say, but
no, I resonate with that. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, and for those willing to keep seeking and to keep opening those doors, I think then you just keep going deeper down, right? Like more stuff keeps popping up, and sometimes it can be a little overwhelming, but like you said before, with Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So it's like, maybe it's whatever's like opening up for people. It's like, okay, like we'll open this up for you, but you gotta kind of like help us out too here, kind of take this into the 3D manifested world.
Completely. And there's a reason why they say that rabbis that used to read the Torah sometimes go mad or go blind. Like, or if you see that movie Pi, how he goes so nuts over it.
I
Like,
actually never saw that movie. I should though.
oh wow,
Yeah,
it's really good.
that's
There's like,
Darren Aronofsky's first movie, right? Pie.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah, but you can drive yourself nuts with all of these things, and like even what Terrence McKenna said, don't give into the astonishment,
Hmm.
but just take a peek and see, and don't let it get you too crazy because it's all happening.
It's all happening. Yeah, for sure. It is. I definitely believe in that. I mean, that seems to be accurate in terms of how I experience the world. You mentioned you're a cinephile. I guess, like I definitely would consider myself one too. Do you think that there's, I mean, I'm also a huge fan of Joseph Campbell and mythology, and I just really like the making sense of things in metaphor, telling stories, interesting characters and archetypes that we can relate to, and those sorts of things. And I see there's like it's really interesting to me to see like the popularity of like what's popular right now and what's kind of like resonating with people and how it's being communicated with like the Marvel movies or Stranger Things or whatever else I guess is out there.
No
But
way.
I haven't seen that. Is that good?
So good. That show I think I relate to more than anything I've ever related to in my entire life.
Oh wow, okay, cool. I
Yeah.
gotta check that out. Yeah, I was just about to ask you like what do you think? It doesn't have to be something current, but what are some movies that kind of like resonate for you in terms of, I guess, getting a good picture on like what is going on in the world and how the world works, or how, I guess, in the similar theme of like what we're talking about here in terms of energy and time and reality and these sorts of things. Are there certain kinds of movies that come up for you that are like, oh, this one nails it, for that this one gets it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's different categories, right? So as far as documentaries that kind of help you see behind the veil, I love Adam Curtis.
Oh
He has a
yeah.
documentary called Hypernormalization that's really great. But then there's also a series called The Century of the Self,
Hmm.
which is a really great thing to watch.
Oh, one of my
But
favorites. Yeah.
so good. But insofar as movies that help you kind of see the metaphor, I really think that Jim Henson was way ahead of his time. To me, he's one of my most beloved creators, and I hold him very close to my heart. The Dark Crystal for me is like the greatest metaphor of reality and like the time that we're in right now. Do you ever see it?
Oh wow. No, I have a couple homework assignments now for this show.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's basically like it's the dawn of the end of time, and you have the mystics, which are the peaceful warriors, and then you have the Skeksis, which are basically like the reptilian bird overlords. But you have these diametrically opposed opposites, but they're not opposite, they're actually connected. So as one is harmed, the other's harmed. There's no separation.
Wow.
It's super trippy. I don't want to give too much away, but it's a great way of seeing non-duality at the end of time, right? But he also had this film called The Cube, which not a lot of people know about. It's super experimental, and it's basically this man wakes up inside of this cube, and he can't escape, and all these different characters pop in and out, and he doesn't know how to ask the right questions, so he's stuck within this container, and it's a really great metaphor for reality as well.
Wow.
And then one of my other favorites, so I actually have the Southern Oracle from the Neverending Story tattooed on me because the Neverending Story is basically like, so theosophy is basically what H.P. Blavatsky and Alice A. Bailey and a lot of these great esoteric thought leaders kind of fit within this container of reality. And the idea is that there's no religion higher than truth. And
Mm.
then from that, there's a branch off called anthroposophy, which Rudolf Steiner was kind of the founder of and behind. And Rudolf Steiner, for those who don't know, he helped form the Waldorf education, and he was very big about like the imagination and imaginal realms, and that imagination is something that should be nourished from childhood,
Hmm.
and we should be taught to nurture that gift, right? So the Neverending Story is basically anthroposophy for beginners, because it's this whole journey of like, you're the reader, you're the writer, you have yourself, and then you have your higher self, and it's just everything happening, right?
Yeah.
So the classic scene where, this one character, Atreyu, is at this gate of the Southern Oracle, which I said I had a tattoo of, and you can only pass through if you are pure of heart and confident without being conceited. And it's just such a beautiful, like, super trippy and like nostalgic film, but with an esoteric lens. There's a lot of potent lessons.
That's so awesome. I gotta watch these films. I think maybe growing up, like I saw that and I was just like, oh, it's like a cartoon for kids or something, or I don't know. It sometimes it slipped by me. I actually didn't see The Princess Bride until like last year. Like there's
Oh, wow.
there's certain movies, like I've seen tons and tons of movies, but there's certain movies that like I'm like afraid to tell people, like, no, I actually haven't seen that. They're like, what's wrong with you? You got to see. Are you crazy? But like I have a like Memento. It's been on my queue for like years. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna watch it one day.
I haven't seen that one either. So.
Okay, yeah, it's Christopher Nolan's, like one of Christopher Nolan's first movies. Everyone says it's really great, so it's just there's a couple of those movies, but I got the list. I wrote it down, put it in the show notes. Movies to watch. But you brought up, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I mean, I love movies. One of the things, I haven't done it as much lately because it's a little time consuming, but I used to do esoteric film analysis all the time on Evolve and Ascend. So, there's so many hidden gems in films. And if you look at it with kind of a detective's eye, you can find the symbolism within it.
Oh yeah.
So I love doing that, just being able to point out the symbolism within the films that are in the mainstream.
Yeah, I had a 33rd degree Freemason, Robert Sullivan, on the show, and he wrote a book called Esoteric. Oh, what shit! I forgot the name of his book, but it's like decoding esoteric symbols in movies.
Oh,
Sorry,
cool.
Robert, I forgot. I butchered the book, but yeah, it was really cool. Like we talked about the Matrix, Blade Runner, Harry Potter, Star Wars. Really, really interesting stuff. But I was gonna say you brought up some interesting stuff about like these messages in the movies, and you can only move through if you're pure of heart and confident but not arrogant or whatever. How do you like manage these human emotions that we all experience? You get upset or you react in a certain way, or you say I try to keep a practice where I'm like, I just meditated today for the first time in like over 2 weeks. So I say that I meditate, but really I kind of fall off the wagon and then get back on. And it's kind of this journey for me that I have to keep trying to keep remembering to do the things that I know are beneficial for me. Do you have any kind of tips, tricks, or things that you do to stay on the path?
Totally. So it's really important to call yourself on your shit, right?
Yeah.
So taking inventory through self-inquiry is really important because we're all human, right? Like I'm not a nun, you're not a monk. We're trying our best to navigate this modern world that we're in and do what we can through the challenges that we're presented with. So, when I fuck up or when I, kind of fall off the path, I understand that there's this quote that my friend, the 33rd degree Freemason, he said that the fastest way to win an argument is to admit that you're wrong. So when things go wrong, I try my best to look at like, how could I have handled that differently? What is it that I have to learn? And how can I move forward from this? And how can I also forgive the situation? How can I forgive myself for reacting in an unfavorable way? And how can I forgive the greater picture? So practicing self-inquiry and forgiveness is like really helped me maintain sanity throughout the journey.
Yeah, maintain sanity is so important. How do you forgive? Like, how do you forgive yourself? Like, what does that look like? I mean, because I think that for me, and maybe other people can resonate with this too, is that I'm pretty hard on myself. Like, I want things to be perfect. If it's not perfect, I kind of like just really. Or maybe, if I recorded a live podcast a couple episodes ago and like a couple weeks ago, and I like said something and I was like, shit. And I was just thinking about that. I'm like, damn it. I can get there, but it takes me a little bit longer sometimes to forgive myself for things because I expect so much out of myself,
Yeah. I mean, I feel you. I'm very similar. But it's just, you got to just not harp on it so much. So it's like last night, actually, I watched this really great documentary called The Kala Chakra, which is
Mm.
that's an initiation that the Dalai Lama gives. And there's a beautiful scene where all the different monks are making a mandala. And like a mandala is made for it to only be destroyed afterwards.
Right. Yeah, they
So
make it out of sand, right?
and it's this beautiful practice. Is so hyper detailed. It takes like forever for them to make, only for it to be washed away. So if we look at moments as our mandala, to not fixate on what it was and to wipe it away and create something new.
Yeah,
And
like mandala making was like the original Snapchat.
yeah.
Gotta live in the moment, people.
Yes.
I mean, like that. And one of the biggest things for me, I mean, that's great. And one of the biggest things for me has been, I was in this Colombian shaman ceremony with Mumbe and Rape when I was in Peru. And one of the guys said something, it just seemed so simple, so easy, but it really resonated with me and stuck with me. And it was like, he basically was just saying, look, like we always forget. So we have to remind ourselves, but we also need other people to remind us, and we have to be willing to accept those reminders. And then we also have to remind others too, because it's just a constant remembering and forgetting.
Completely. It's we have amnesia from the amniotic space moving forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, remembering is really important because it's so easy to forget. That's a beautiful piece of advice he offered. I love that.
Yeah, and it was like it just seemed like so simple, but it just clicked and it stuck with me. And I was like, yeah, maybe it was the way that he said it too. It was like a really nice, calm, peaceful time in the ceremony, and he took his time with it. But it was like, yeah, I have to kind of be a little bit easier on myself because I know that I'll forget, so I have to, remember as well. What about like for you? I mean, what about navigating relationships? I mean, how does, because that could be adds a whole nother dimension to, walking on a path, that you're on, where your mission, your goal, if I can say, is that you're spreading and sharing information that helps wake people up, brings more awareness, compassion, empathy, love, and joy and inspiration to the world. And that's not easy to do, especially in a world that seems, for the mainstream structures of our society seem to be against that, so you're kind of pushing that forward into the matrix. But what about like in terms of navigating relationships? Like how have you found those, your practices and the work that you do to kind of inform that aspect of life?
Yeah, it's been a major learning experience. So from every level, from like, your family relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, it informs a lot when you go on this path. I remember when I finally, did start Evolve and Ascend and stepped into this, everybody thought I was out of my fucking mind. Like, oh, you're just nuts. What do you just drink a psychedelic in the jungle and now you're talking all this hoodoo nonsense?
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And it's funny because what happens eventually, and I've learned to like laugh it off, but especially even in my family, where like things that I was telling them back in like 2012, now they repeat back to me because they heard it on Joe Rogan.
Oh,
Like,
okay,
okay.
awesome. You're validated.
Yes. I'm like, okay, well, do you remember I told you that same thing? But okay, cool.
Yeah.
It's hard not to like get frustrated. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that that's a big part of it too. Um, part of practice is not you yourself getting triggered by people that may not understand, and then all of a sudden people have that awakening and then co-opt it in a way that they want to. um it's definitely been a learning experience.
Yeah.
In relationships, I've been lucky. So since my relationship ended with the ex that I was with when I had my whole breaking open the head moment, because I found this path and ultimately he found zeros and ones in Bitcoin, and God bless him, he's doing really well. But my relationships since then have been with people that really resonate with where I'm at, and we kind of meet in the middle. But now is kind of the first time in my life that I've really been single, and being single and kind of speaking from this space and being in this place, it's kind of a whole new dance to learn, because people either make false assumptions like I'm into Burning Man and tripping all the time, or I identify as a witch and, I'm a weirdo. And really, like, I try to stay as down to earth as possible, and trying to find ways to talk about the stuff without people judging automatically is interesting dance to dance.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is a dance. I mean, everything is a dance. It's like one of my favorite Alan Watts quotes of all time, where he talks about the meaning of life. Are you familiar with that one?
I love it.
That's
Yes.
so great. Where it's like just life is like music, and the point is just to dance. It's not to get to rush to get to some crashing chord at the end. It's just to go along with the flow. And yeah, I mean, I experienced something similar. Like, my family is very. I like not like. I was gonna say like not Sopranos Italian, but like Italian enough to be like,
Yeah.
like so, like, oh, what are you going to, get your head all messed up in the jungle over there, or like my brother was asking me like, so what do they do at this place? So what does a guy just come in with a mask and scream and make you pee your pants or something? He's like, what are you paying all that money for? I'll do that for free. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, so what's like a good, because I think a lot of people listening out there like probably experience this kind of stuff, listening to my show, following your work, getting into psychedelics, consciousness expansion, these sorts of things. How do you like kind of bring that up appropriately to family members without them like laughing at you, or maybe they will laugh at you, just have to move on, like you said, I mean, it's an interesting dance to dance, but any kind of like words of wisdom from experience and how to navigate that tango?
Yeah, so I think Gandhi said it best. Where he said, first they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win,
Right.
basically. So ultimately, there are these different phases of people coming into awareness with your new awareness. So I remember when I told my mom that I was going to go do ayahuasca, and she freaked out, and she was like, I'll pay you to not go. I'm so scared you're going to die, and this, that, and the other thing." And then, I came back, and she saw the profound changes that it had in my life. So I think the biggest way to help shift perception is to embody the changes that you find on this path, and to ask questions. So, when people want to ask, or people want to place judgment, or like make ignorant comments, or say like, "Oh, you're just fucking tripping in the jungle, you're just doing drugs." And it's like, well, so tell me what you know about ayahuasca. And then, you wind up stumping people and say, well, I'll tell you what I know. And being informed and having facts and tidbits has been really helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
And just sharing that information.
Yeah, I'm just gonna throw that down there, drop that mic,
Yeah.
walk out. Yeah.
Exactly. And just, being able to fill up your toolbox with as much wisdom and knowledge as you can, and knowing how to gracefully play with ideas, because nothing can be more triggering than our family. And especially when our family's like, "Oh yeah, what are you doing with your life?" I like, I get it. My mom's Irish and Scottish, but like the rest of my family is Sicilian, and they're just very much like, "What are you doing?"
Sicilian. I like how you
Yeah.
said Sicilian, not Italian, because that's what my cousin says. I'm not Italian. Okay, I'm not even white. I'm Sicilian. Okay. I'm like, all right, sure.
Yeah, I mean, you get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's being able to find a way to articulate the ideas in a really eloquent manner, and that takes time, and it's a skill set to develop, and it's just keeping yourself in check and not getting triggered. But eventually, you find that they they open up a little bit in time.
Yeah, I mean, time. Yeah, back to time. Oh, old time.
Good old time.
Yeah, she really bucks hard that time. Well, I forgot what I was gonna say. I was gonna say something about. Oh, right. Yes, the evolving and ascending. Right. I mean, it's such a great, aspect of the journey that we have to take, because I think a lot of people, maybe the misconception is like, oh, cool, you just drink some ayahuasca or you read a book and then all of a sudden you're changed and it's just a perfect rainbow path to bliss. You're riding on a unicorn and there's just doves everywhere and everything is serene and peaceful and everyone gets along. Everyone who identifies as a psychedelic, spiritual, love and light warrior, we're all we're all just holding hands, singing "Kumbaya," and you know, it's not like that. And
No.
and I think that, like, you know, that you have to kind of be prepared, I guess, to go through this. So there's some trials and tribulations. There's some work that needs to be done through your experience working with psychedelics or even non-psychedelics. I mean, any kind of moment that you had that was like, oh my God, this is going to be difficult to kind of work through or to integrate or to put into my life. Is there anything that comes up for you about that?
Totally. So, funny enough, so when I started Evolve and Ascend that summer, I had all of my money in this trading platform called Mt. Gox.
Mm-hmm.
I put like all of my savings into Bitcoin
Oh,
because
wow.
I like Bitcoin. And at that point, it was like, $30 a coin, and I had a really nice stash of it. So it's like, this is what I'm going to use to start Evolve and Ascend. This would be my nest egg. I know I've been told by my spirits on this journey that I'm supposed to do this, and I have this, and now is the time. Again, man plans, God laughs.
Right.
Pretty much within like the month of me starting Evolve and Ascend, overnight, I lost every single thing that I had.
Ugh.
Mt. Gox got hacked due to software malleability, and I didn't have a plan B. I was just like, no, so certain that this is what I meant to do, and that was the money that was going to help me do it. So when everything was lost, I was like, oh my God, what now? I don't know what to do. And it was like, I have no idea. Everything's gone. But thank God, I am so grateful that it happened, because anything worth having is worth fighting for. And there is no easy fix, there is no quick fix. Evolution and revolution is a chaotic process, because out of chaos comes order. And that's one of my favorite Hermetic axioms. It's this mantra by which I live my life, because darkness is there to show us light. And if you look at, like, even in the mystery schools like Freemasonry, there are these paths of initiation where you have to prove your worthiness to attain a goal. So a lot of people think, you have this psychedelic experience, you have this Kundalini awakening, you fucking go to Burning Man, and then you're like, oh my God, I have it all figured out. Maintaining the virtue of humbleness and knowing that, like, you may have gotten closer to scratching the surface, but like none of us is ever going to have it completely all figured out, and life is going to throw you different things at different times. You never fucking know what's ahead of you, so you have to stay humble and grounded on the path and ready for whatever comes your way. There is no fast quick fix. There is no, now I'm enlightened and I've got everything figured out. Maybe for some people, maybe like the people that like have that and then they lucked out in timing with Bitcoin. Who knows?
Right.
But, like,
Yeah.
it's a never ending journey, and there is no stop to it. If this is the path that you're on, it's the well runs deep, and you just have to really stay grounded and humble on the journey.
Right, because you could have went the other way and been like, "Oh, why this always happens to me? Fuck the universe. This is bullshit."
Mhm.
Right, and then what are you going to create out of that? Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff where, like, I loved The Secret when I first read it, but it's also kind of misleading, and there's a lot of snake oil there
Ooh,
because
why is that?
because because that's just like, visualize the $1 million check, see yourself sitting in the car. You're going to get the car when you see yourself sitting in the
Oh,
car,
right,
and then the
right,
checks
yeah.
are going to come to you in the mail. And there's so much emphasis on
Material
the
stuff, yeah.
spiritual materialism,
Right,
to
yeah.
the point where some of the greatest experiences that I've had, some of the greatest revelations I've had, was when I was dead ass broke, and it was an encounter with a friend, or a chance meeting with a teacher, or just things that money can't buy. So putting so much emphasis on this attachment to getting that check, I think, can also be very damaging. So when that thing happened with losing all my money in Bitcoin, I had a lot of anger. Was like, well, I thought that if I just visualize it and law of attraction and I'm doing everything right, I feel like I'm vibrating at a high level. Why am I not vibrating abundance into my life?
Am I vibrating at the right level? Can someone can someone test this for me? Do I need to vibrate higher, or yeah?
Yeah, but then it's like that attachment causes suffering, and there is no great myth there is no great story that doesn't come without contrast.
Right.
So, don't hold on to such attachment that the path is always going to be full of puppies and kitties and light and rainbows.
Right. Yeah, totally. I got that similar kind of thing happen when I had I was really into the Terence McKenna 5 grams in silent darkness, heroic doses. So I was doing that, and then like I had this mushroom trip, and like these like leprechaun elves were like drinking beer and like cheersing and clanking beers and like laughing at me because I had like really went super serious. Like I was just in this weird place where I was trying to figure out like the transcendental object at the end of time. Like I was going in deep every week, and I'm going to like know the big thing. And, and they like just turned on me in this like trickster fashion. They were just mocking me and laughing at me and just like, haha, yeah. Oh, show me the truth. Oh yeah. I'm so enlightened. Like, and I was like, okay, all right, I see. Like oftentimes the way the universe works is like if we're walking on like a giant Rubik's cube that's ever changing with trapdoors that go infinitely down to, all kinds of crazy places, and you just have to kind of zone in and figure it out, right?
Totally. I'll never forget. I had one of my more profound DMT experiences. I went into one of the portals within the Rubik's Cube, and I was basically in this room seeing these two beings just programming their computers, and they both looked back at me and were like, "Oh my God, what are you doing here? Don't fuck with anything. We're busy." And then just went back to programming, and I watched them, and I was just like, "Wow. It is so much stranger than we can ever fathom."
Yeah, so much stranger. Yeah, and I think like for me, like I had this kind of idea when I first started down this path, like I'm gonna get to a point where I figure everything out. Like
yeah,
like that was my original intention. Was like, oh, I'm just gonna figure out like what's going on with like reality, like that. Like I'm gonna get to a point where I just know that, and now I just think that's laughable, but.
Yeah, same.
But there's but still I think we both know that there is like this sort of plane that we can navigate on, that it's like, okay, there's something here, and if we just, like you said, stay humble, keep moving forward. I mean, it's did you ever see the movie Interstellar?
Of course, I
Right.
love that.
What is it? Doesn't he figure out that like the whole thing is all about love?
Yeah, I think that's I mean, it's such a funny thing because it's this intangible, right? Love. All you need is love. It's the core truth of everything, but it's this thing because what is love? Is love a romantic love? Is love between you and your like child? Is it between you and your pet? Is it you and a friend? And it's this energy. I think that it is the all-encompassing overwhelm of creative force, and yeah, I mean, I think through all the tessellations and the tesseract, that is the highest vibration of source that we can reach. And I hate even using the word vibration, but
sometimes, yeah, I mean, I think
sometimes you got it.
Yeah, like McKenna said, like, we don't yet have the right language yet, so we still have to figure it out. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's Ram Dass was giving this talk about, I was listening to this recorded talk that he gave about I think it was Krishna and Arjuna, some battle, and one of the guys says, you can't get me because I am love, and love is beyond time's reach. And I just thought that was really cool.
This is a Bhagavad Gita, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh, so beautiful, those texts.
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, it's just like we're here podcasting for an hour and 22 minutes now, and now we get back to the kind of the core thing of why we're all doing what we're doing and what it's all about. It's this love and connection and trying to spread that and help other people see that, right? I think that's oftentimes gets lost, and I think also too in a lot of spiritual or psychedelic communities, it could be very about the mind and about the power of the brain and the mind, and how can we get it to be optimal, and what can we see and what can we learn and what can we know. And then really it's like the body and these other kind of intangible things like love are just maybe not talked about enough.
Yeah, I think that, the concept of mind within that space is still very much in the body mind, because it's like total human optimization. How can I refine my mind so that I can navigate this material realm to the best of my ability, right?
Yeah.
But I love the Kabbalion. It's one of my favorite esoteric texts. And one of the Hermetic principles speaks of the universe, that the all is mind, the universe is mental. So if everything is a byproduct of mind, love is like the highest byproduct of that mind. So it's the energy that effervesces through everything. But it's just such a dense concept to wrap your head around, even though it's like the lightest thing that we can go towards.
It's like almost too easy. We're like, no, we want drama, we want a challenge. And
yeah,
I think that's true to a certain extent. I look out at what's going on in the world today, and I just see that like people want drama. They want, like, maybe they don't really deeply down at their core soul level want it, but it fills the time, it fills the void, it gives them a purpose and a reason. Oh, what did Trump tweet? Like, let me get on that. Like, this theater of life that we have and that people are getting sucked into. I've gotten sucked into. I used to be aggressive on Twitter. I don't use it anymore so much, but getting into like little arguments and things like that, and it's like there's like some kind of fun drama to it that I think people generally like.
Yeah, it's a distraction.
Yeah.
It's very hard not to get angry. And there's so much anger in this space. At times, like, I get this overwhelm because there's so much like fuck Trump, smash the patriarchy, and all this language that's so dense, right? And one of my other favorite quotes is by Alice Bailey, and she speaks of the universe as a great theater of mirrors. So, people want to just hate on Trump so much. And at the end of the day, this person was a baby at one point, and there had to be some kind of trauma or something that happened to him to get to him to be where he's at now. And I think what the world lacks now is a sense of compassion, because we just want to, it's like Lord of the Flies, kill the pig, smash his head, like
Right.
get rid of him. But it's like, ultimately that solves nothing. What can you see in the reflection of Trump that is a uprising of something within the well of the collective unconscious that needed to be addressed? Because where people are taking it now, I don't really see good happening. I see more divide and conquer, identity politics, hate. There's so much hate that, like, it scares me, to be honest. And I don't like to feed fear, but when I see and feel it, it's very dense. And it doesn't seem
Yeah.
useful.
Right. No, yeah. And even people, I mean, one of the biggest things that I think is that I notice is like, well, we're on the morally superior side, so it's okay to use hate against something that we hate. And it's like, whoa, wait a second, hold on. Like, you're saying that something is hateful or bad or you don't like it. I think you brought up a really good point. This mirrors, and who's that again? Alice Bailey.
Alice A. Bailey.
Alice A. Bailey, yeah. I mean, I think that that's totally what it is. It's like, think about when we notice things going on with ourselves on an individual level, a part of ourselves that we don't like, or something that we do that we don't like, and it's like, oh, get it away. I don't like it. I hate it. And then that's just magnified, in other on the larger level and through other people that we see.
Completely.
Yeah.
I did a podcast with Sean and Cass on Very Ape, and Sean had said, it's like, you can't delete your problems. It doesn't, I loved how he said it. It was like, it doesn't
Control,
really
Alt,
work
Delete.
that way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Well, we want to. I think that's the thing. Like a lot of the sort of like biohacking and things like that. It's like, how can we tune the human to a machine level of efficiency, where we can just kind of like get rid of what we don't want, keep what we want, and then just make ourselves the most optimal performing things. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, maybe if that's what you like, but we're not machines. Like, we're human beings,
Yeah. No, I mean, that stuff, it scares me to think about. I think our humanness is what allows us to be unique and have this unique experience. And I don't know, the AI stuff and wanting to program to be these kind of like machine device. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really
Is
know.
is that this is good because we're gonna wrap soon, but I want to get to what is your biggest what's the thing that you look at as being like the biggest challenge or concern? I mean, you mentioned that this kind of stuff scares you a little bit, so maybe you could throw that in there, and then after you kind of answer that, talk about what makes you like hopeful and what you look forward to.
Yeah. So, within the space of non-spirituality and spirituality, there is this rampant uh, kind of disease of materialism. So there's a lot of spiritual materialism within the conscious media space, where it's like, I am now like a fashion witch, and like I have now self-actualized so that I am wearing all these designer clothes, and like this is just what it's all about. It's all glamour, right? Which you're just feeding an illusion. And I'm not trying to say that from a space of judgment, but there has to be some discerning of what is actually self-serving and what is serving the greater good. And then you look at this place of people wanting to merge with technology and AI as this coming threat to everything. And again, that's taking our reality and making it more within the material. And there's not really like a balance between the spiritual and material. And it scares me that we're going to lose so much touch with nature and our humanness and compassion for the world at large, that it's just so much emphasis is placed on the self that the selfishness becomes this all-consuming abyss that we sink into.
Oh,
So
jeez. Yeah.
Not to sound so dense, but it really it feels that way sometimes, and it really scares me.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I agree. I think it's my whole thing here is that it's like, okay, cool. Like we have all these technological advancements and all this stuff and that's good, I guess. But for who? For what? Like human beings are very adaptable. What do we want to adapt to? I think we have that choice now. We can choose
Absolutely.
what future do we want to have? What do we want to adapt to? Do we want to adapt to the technocratic, like machine AI singularity thing, where we just destroy everything and we just build our own, whatever, and or do we want to adapt to something different, maybe something that makes us come more into our humanness? I think about that a lot. It's just like, where are we going and what is this for? Why are we doing these things? It seems like every innovation that comes out, it's like, oh, cool, like Amazon's going to have drone delivery soon. Well, that's great. And like, oh, you don't have to worry about wasting time eating lunch anymore. You can just have a pill and like get your nutrients that way. And this way you can be a more productive and efficient worker. It's like, whoa, what are we doing here? What is this? What is going on? And people get enamored by the new technology stuff. That's why I think like there's a lot of this 5G concern going around, and I'm kind of like taking interest in that because a 5G tower was like put on my street, and I'm like, wait a second, I don't know if this is good or bad. I don't understand what's happening here. And then you look at like what China's doing with this social credit system and all this stuff, and I'm like, if we don't have like a change or like an evolution of consciousness where people are moving into more of like a human heart space, people are going to accept this stuff because they're going to be like, oh wow, this is going to make us safer. We're going to have faster speeds, faster connection. That's kind of what scares me, is that like people are going to want that stuff,
Yeah, because it's like ultimately what is that all for? To play on some game on your iPhone and tend to your digital props, or to like, just get likes and comments with people that you don't even have a real relationship with. I mean, that's the thing. Ultimately, like what is it all for? You are so connected but so disconnected, and there's no balance. And I think that technology is such a great tool that I'm so grateful for. We're having this podcast. We connected through
Yeah.
social media.
Yeah.
Social media has been able to liberate me so that I have a life where I can work for myself. But there's Angelina Jolie actually has this tattooed on her. It's quote me nutrient me destruit, which means what nourishes me also destroys me.
Mm.
So how do we find balance? Buckminster Fuller, I think, was a great thinker that was trying to find a way to synthesize nature and technology and make it into a holistic system. I wish that there was more people kind of thinking in the realms of balance as opposed to this situation we're in at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're one of them, right? I mean, maybe not at a Buckminster Fuller like level, but you're doing your part. I'd like to think that I am, and there's other people out there doing their part. So what gives you like hope? What keeps you going, every day when you have to do stuff for Evolve and Ascend? Or I want to talk about Whitma too as we end. But like, what gives you the motivation, the hope, the light at the end of the tunnel? What keeps you going?
Conversations like this,
All right.
connecting to people like you. Within the starting of Evolve and Ascend, I've met so many amazing visionaries and thinkers and creators and conversationalists, and just people that really want to see true change and speak a similar language. Like the fact that this conversation has been like almost like 2 hours and it's just flowed so beautifully. That makes me so excited and happy. So I'm like, wow, like we all exist in this world. There are people out there that want the same thing, and that makes me motivated to just keep speaking these things and to keep creating and to do what I can within my wheelhouse to inspire change in the world.
Yeah, the others, finding the others, and
Yes.
the community that can be formed. I know. I'm so glad we got to have this conversation. It's been so nice because we've just been kind of like social media buddies, I guess,
Yeah, like digital high fives. We're just like, I love everything you post.
Exactly. Yeah,
Good
digital high
stuff.
fives. Exactly. Yes. And that's another good thing about what you're doing, Jennifer, like with Evolve and Ascend. And I sometimes I'll follow different people doing different stuff, and they'll post things and I'll be like, yes, right on. Okay, cool. And then there's something and I'm like, wait, what? Wait, what is that? So I've never had that experience with Evolve and Ascend. So yeah, that means, I don't know, you're putting out good stuff. So congratulations.
That means a lot.
What'd you say?
I said that means a lot.
Oh, really. Good. Yeah. Let's talk about Whitma, well-being in the modern age, right? You have something coming up, I think, soon. I don't know well, we'll see when this gets released, but you hold live events. Talk a little bit about what this is and how this got started and what the function of Whitma is.
Yeah, so our next event is coming up on April 20th in LA. It was a funny synchronicity that it wound up being 420. We didn't initially plan for that.
Nice.
But it worked out well. So I basically first connected to Whitma because Noah Lampert is a dear friend of mine. I love him to death. He had asked me to be a panelist at the first Whitma event, which was almost 2 years ago. So I was first on his panel. We did a talk on comedy, creativity, and consciousness. And from there, I was asked to then be a moderator at the next event. Noah had dropped off, then the partnership changed. And after the last event in LA, I took a meeting with Anna Lungard, who was one of the founders of Whitma, and she had asked me if I was interested in potentially partnering in a bigger way. And for me, something that's really been coming up, especially just even like what we talked about in this conversation, is taking it offline and actually like really like bringing people together and creating community and creating things that feel like inclusive and diverse and hold space for the weirdos.
Yeah.
And also the thought leaders. And I was like, you know what? Yes, I want to do this. So our first event with me as an official partner happened this last October. And this one coming up on April 20th is the second one where I'm actually a partner in it. And for me, it's felt so important to get behind and be a part of and to curate in a very specific way, because within the wellness space, there's a lot of just like woke white women. And there's not much diversity and inclusivity. And I really wanted to come in and curate from a space of intersectionality where we can hold space for everybody, the artists, the creatives, the psychedelic people, the people that are the spiritualists. The last event we did in New York, it was so cool because I had my dear friend Nitin Ron, who is a baby doctor who climbs the mountains in the Himalayas and doesn't consider himself a mystic, but is actually the most mystical person I've ever met in my life. He's on the same panel with Valeria Ruelas, who's on Instagram as the Mexican witch. So we have a witch and a doctor meeting in the middle,
Nice.
talking about the same thing. It's like politically incorrect, but for the wellness space.
That's amazing. I love that, because I recently was thinking of something like that as I was running the other day, because I'm thinking about, I do this podcast. I kind of just, it's just virtual. It's online. I want to start doing more things. And I've been collaborating with a friend here in Denver who's doing live events where he brings people together to watch documentaries, and then there's a panel after, and I did a live podcast from there. And so I was like, yeah, this is really good to kind of come out and be with people. And another idea that I had, it seems like that's what you're doing, is getting people to get together in a space to talk to each other who normally probably wouldn't talk to each other, and then see like what happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's so special seeing what does happen from there. So it's like, I hope the next Whitma you can come, because every fall we're doing New York, every April we do LA, and then we want to do little pop-ups in between. But it is something really special when you can put everybody in a space together and then take the walls down, and then you find out like you actually have way more in common than you ever realized. It's a really fun thing to curate and put together.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in this, digital age, it's so easy, I think, to just kind of fully exist in that digital space. But there's, through my experience, there's nothing more powerful than like being in the presence of other people.
Completely.
That makes a difference.
Yeah, because and to feel safe, to not feel like there's some hierarchy or there's people above you, or because somebody's an influencer with 100,000 followers, like whatever the fuck that means, that they're not human too.
Right.
So it's like the walls come down when you're all in the same space together, and there's something really beautiful about that. That's actually like where new ideas really emerge from that human connection.
Amazing. That's so great that you're taking this on, you're facilitating this and bringing this to fruition. I mean, it's what we need desperately is, more people getting together and communicating and having respectful dialogue, and the diversity and inclusion involved in that is super important. So awesome that you're putting that together. Well, Jennifer, yeah, I mean, this has been like just a really cool conversation. I'm glad it flowed the way it did, because like I don't ever like write questions down beforehand and stuff, and sometimes I'm like, oh wait, I need to think of a thing to say, but I think it went well, and I'm glad that you made the time to talk to me today. Any kind of closing final thoughts, if you want to share any other things that you're working on or upcoming stuff, or where people can go, or just closing words?
Yeah, so Whitma wouldn't be possible if it weren't for Noah, but I also just have to give all credit where credit's due. I do have an amazing partner, Anna Lungard, who just is a badass businesswoman. So just have to give her a shout and thank you for being such an incredible partner. But I have my Oracle deck coming out on May 14th. It'll be out everywhere books are sold. It's called the Menti Oracle. So if you want to learn more about that, thementioracle.com, and the deck actually explores a lot of what we talked about on the show, and a very tangible way to connect to the present. And if you want to learn more about me, you can go to jennifersodini.com, evolveandascend.com, all that stuff. And I guess my best parting words of wisdom is never be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to talk to people and to reach out, because I think we live in a time where, like we said, there's a lot of fear and a lot of divide and conquer mentality. But at the end of the day, we're all human. And in connecting to other humans, you can connect to your humanness. And I think that what the world needs now is more of that, just finding a way to love one another and to care for each other, and to talk to each other gracefully, and, to open your heart to new ideas.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I have gotten a sense of from, being aware and following your work and stuff. It's like just feeling what you just said, it comes through, and so it's always good to see people out there that are really kind of committed to doing it in a genuine, authentic, and, I guess right. I mean, correct, appropriate. I don't know what the right word is, but like the right way, I guess I'll just say for now, as being a placement holder for a better word to emerge later. So thanks for doing all the things that you do, and for working so hard on creating these things. And it's just reinforced through this conversation. So I'm so glad that we had a chance to talk, because I have such a better sense of who you are and what you're all about and everything now. So go check out Evolve and Ascend, Whitma. Go look it all up. Follow Jennifer on Instagram. She's always posting good stuff on there. Thanks for listening. Till next time. Peace. Hey, I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Hope you guys like these podcasts and enjoy them. And if you do, please spread the podcast, share it, tell a neighbor, tell a coworker, tell a friend, tell a cat, tell a mouse, tell a dog, tell an ant, tell a firefly, tell whoever you tell. Share it, spread it, like it, all that good stuff. If you really love the show, you want to go a step further, you really want to help us out, leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, and go to patreon.com, patreon/MikeBrank, and patreon.com/MikeBrank, and you can donate as little as $1 a month, $2 a month, whatever you want. Help support the show that way as well. But remember, I love you guys no matter what you do. I just love that you tune in and you enjoy these podcasts. Message me. I like hearing feedback. Get in touch with me on Instagram, Mikeadelic Podcast, Mike Brank on Facebook as well. And thanks to our sponsors, Synchro and Hemp Bombs. If you want a discount on ketogenic and plant-based nutrition products, go to Synchro and type in the code Mikeadelic at checkout to get 20% off. And they have amazing ketogenic chocolate fudge called Keto Mana that I have all the time because it has like no sugar and carbs in it. So it's great. And it's delicious. And if you want CBD, go to hempbombs.com and get 15% off all your CBD needs, I guess. And just enter the code Mike15 at checkout. But thank you once again to everybody. Thanks to Danny Barnett and Galaxia for the music, the intro and the outro. I love you all. Peace.